Okay, everyone, just a short video today. As we've all heard by now, President Trump is considering all options, shall we say, regarding the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Jeanine Pirro. Now, according to news reports, the president is upset with the U.S. Attorney's decision to drop the prosecution against the alleged Reflecting Pool vandals. Now, one of them is a former Olympian, David Hearn. He was indicted, and 3 other defendants were charged for allegedly vandalizing the Reflecting Pool's new lining. Now, this was just ahead of the America 250 celebrations at the National Mall. The lining had come off the Reflecting Pool and would have to be repaired. But new evidence apparently clears the alleged vandals. The Department of the Interior provided documents showing that the lining had peeled and bubbled throughout the entire pool, including in the middle of the pool, which doesn't appear to be the work of human vandals. Now, a contractor apparently had rushed the $14 million renovation. Now, here's U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro with boxes of evidence that she shared with President Trump just before seeking to dismiss the charges against the alleged vandals. This photo was taken after her meeting with President Trump. So, with evidence like that, it seems the government could not prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, prosecutors have ethical responsibilities beyond that of other types of attorneys. Prosecutors must be ministers of justice and not just advocates for one side. For example, they must not file or maintain cases that are not supported by probable cause. Now, this is apart from investigations, of course. They can investigate cases to build the file. Now, another example is prosecutors have to disclose to the defense exculpatory material in a timely manner so that it can be used by the defense at trial. And that's key, at the trial. For example, under the Jenks Act, after a witness testifies at trial, if the defense attorney at that point moves for production of prior statements by the witness, prosecutors have to disclose them then, at the trial. Now, the defense attorney will ask for a recess to go through the prior statements and prepare for cross-examination. And, to this day, courts cannot compel earlier disclosure of prior statements of trial witnesses. Now, one of the practical reasons for that is the government may not always know who's going to testify until the trial. It could be very fast-moving. Now, typically, though, the government will voluntarily disclose prior statements of anticipated trial witnesses before the trial begins. Now, prosecutors also have a responsibility not to look the other way. They cannot intentionally avoid seeking out evidence merely because it would hurt the government's case or help the defense. And after a conviction, if new credible evidence emerges, making it substantially likely that the defendant is not guilty of the offense, the prosecutor has a responsibility to remedy the wrongful conviction. Okay, so now with the new evidence on the Reflecting Pool, the folks who side with the alleged vandals say they've been exonerated. Well, by what standard? Now, the government could not prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. I believe that's fair to say. But can the alleged vandals prove their conduct to the standard of actual innocence, which means actually did not commit the crime? Now, the lining peeling on its own because of a botched renovation is an alternative explanation, but does it preclude all other explanations? I say it does not, okay? It's tough to prove a negative. In a case like this, an alibi defense or mistaken identity defense, either one of those could be used to prove actual innocence. So, if the defendants weren't at the location at all after the renovations, they were out of state, that would be an alibi. Or maybe the defendants' names are similar to someone who was on the facial recognition, or the facial recognition got it wrong. For example, maybe a witness said, "Hey, I recognize that individual pictured at the Reflecting Pool. Isn't he a former Olympian? Not him in the photo?" That's mistaken identity, which meets the standard of actual innocence. But this alternative explanation of a contractor who rushed to complete the $14 million renovation, that doesn't negate the possibility of bad conduct by alleged vandals that occurred along with the botched renovation. Now, not saying that that's what happened with these defendants. Maybe they were actually innocent. I'm pointing out it's tough to get actual innocence out of this, in my view. And this is only my view. They might be able to get an actual innocence finding from some judges on that evidence alone. The lining was peeling and bubbling, even in the middle of the pool. Now, lots of attorneys probably wouldn't go to the expungement hearing with just that, okay? Or if it's civil liability, you wouldn't go to the jury with just that. which explains why now there's talk of piercing grand jury secrecy to find out what was said to the grand jury to get the indictment. In my view, it's not going to help because, for example, what if the U.S. attorney searched the defendant's social media and found derisive comments about the renovations? Okay, people say angry things on social media, which makes it seem like they're about to do something. Okay, I would guess that that type of evidence was shown to the grand jury. And let's not forget the defendant stuck his hand in the water. Okay, most people wouldn't do that. Before the renovations, the reflecting pool was nasty. And plus, it's warm weather now. The flesh eating bacteria are back in full force. Most people wouldn't just stick their hand in a pool in this type of weather. Come on now, the behavior was suspicious. And vandalism occurs at national landmarks. Now, not so often within the National Mall generally because it's so exposed, but the America 250 renovations were going on at the time, so there was a heightened awareness of potential problems. So, do the defendants here have actual innocence? Well, if they're going into court, it will be up to the judge, and they probably should bring more evidence than what they've got now. It's tough to prove a negative, as I mentioned. And for a defendant who stuck his hand in the pool, did he pull at the lining? If he did, that's not actual innocence, in my view. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, leave a like and don't forget to subscribe.